Have a look at Miss Pandora Gray. Almost my first service customer, and maybe my last one. She had a little rattle that she called a Tinkle in the right front door, she thought. And I believed her. Because I am young and easily led by girls who look anything like Pandora Gray.
I'm sorry, Billy.
I'm a parts counterman by experience and a service salesman by ambition. And when Al Davis cut his hand and had to be taken to the doctor, Big Mike actually gave me his blazer and clipboard and a word of advice. And I was what I wanted to be for part of one morning, about 2 hours and 15 minutes, which was not very long.
Long enough.
Too long. 2 hours and 15 minutes too long.
But you were so sweet about it. Let me tell Mr. Gale how sweet you were about it.
Thanks, but no thanks.
No, don't tell me how sweet he was. Let me forget how bad he was, even for a substitute. Right front door goes tinkle, tinkle. I knew I shouldn't do it, letting you get out there at all, even on the recommendation of my service manager. I should have my head examined.
Well, like I told you, Mr. Gale,
And your head should be sent to Harvard Medical School. I know what you told me. You told me he had a lot of desire. At his age, I had a lot of desire, the prime result of which was 11 children to raise and educate. Look at these repair orders you wrote up, Billy. Look at this one on top. Mr. William Rhodes. Check brake pull to the right. That's what you wrote for the mechanic?
Yes, sir.
How did you discover that Mr. Rhodes' brakes pull to the right?
Well, he told me they did.
He told you they pull to the right. That's how you know.
Well, sir.
If our customers diagnose their service problems and the mechanics repair them, why do we need service salesmen? The mechanic, acting on your instruction, did pull the wheel, did examine the linings, and did not find anything wrong. He did notice that the front tires had a scrub pattern that suggested misalignment. The car is at this moment being road tested, something you should have done. Now we have to call the customer and tell him what we're going to do. And somebody's got to pay for the time the mechanic spent checking for a trouble that wasn't there.
if our mechanic had been less conscientious, we'd have turned the car back to Mr. Rhodes with nothing done to it, who would have driven down to the first stoplight, turned around and driven right back to our service department and charged us with being dishonest or stupid or both.
That was your first customer. Mr. Fred Larkin was your second.
Yes, sir.
Just tell us how that went, Billy.
Well, sir, I said, what can we do for you today? And,
You can fix this ignorant air conditioner. It doesn't know it's hot out there today.
I'm surprised you didn't write down check air conditioner for ignorance.
air conditioner doesn't work right, sir. It doesn't cool.
Sure doesn't. Not this morning.
So I wrote that down.
So you did. How much help do you think that was to the mechanic?
Not much. But Big Mike told me to be sure I always wrote exactly the condition the customer wants fixed. He said that way the mechanic would know what needed to be done, even if I didn't.
Yes, but you didn't find out the exact condition. It's like saying, check engine, it sounds funny. Exactly what did he mean his air conditioner doesn't work? Doesn't work any of the time, doesn't turn on, doesn't cool at all, or doesn't cool enough to suit the customer? For what temperature is his climate control set? Does his blower work? Is the air conditioner noisy when it comes on?
By talking to the customer for 5 minutes, Billy, you can find out what it'll take the mechanic maybe a half hour to pinpoint. That's what I mean by writing down the exact condition the customer's complaining about. I guess I didn't say it as clearly as I thought I did.
You showed some improvement in that regard with your handling of the third customer. At least you tried to pinpoint the condition. Miss Pandora Gray, 105 South Haven Drive, apartment 16B, 1968 convertible. Right front door goes tinkle, tinkle. I've been sitting at this desk for 31 years, and this is the very first right front door that we've had that goes tinkle, tinkle. Billy,
Yes, sir?
you're fired. Not because Miss Gray's problem actually turned out to be a left rear quarter panel brace that went clunk, clunk. I know that body noises can be and usually are very misleading, so that's a forgivable mistake. But anybody who would write this nonsense down on a...
Mr. Gale, I'd like to put in a word for Billy.
Is the word goodbye?
The word is young. He's young. And Miss Pandora Gray is young.
So?
Well, she's not only young, she's quite distracting.
A looker?
No, Billy was the looker. She was the lookee, as she usually is.
That we are not supposed to do.
It's hard not to look at Pandora, Mr. Gale. And I think Billy was, well, slightly stunned, which is bad, of course, but with a certain small amount of justification.
So at least I'm still on the payroll. Because Mr. Gale is not near as hard-hearted as he sounds. And I guess he listens to Big Mike even when he pretends he's not. And so did I. When Big Mike told me that the next time I got a chance at being a service salesman, he expected me to prove that he was right about me.
Everything changes, Billy. I don't have to tell you that. But some people still look at a service department and think it's the same old service department running along in the same old way. And it looks the same, except for being bigger and busier, but it's all the time adjusting in ways that are not visible to people not actually involved in it. For example, we're now adjusting to the fact that we have more service customers who insist on better and more accurate service than ever before, coupled with the fact that the product is not any easier to diagnose and is probably a little harder in certain areas. Today, it's just about impossible for the average service salesman to be a complete diagnostician the way we once expected him to be, especially on some of the major, more complicated problems. He often doesn't have the time to go through an extended diagnosing checking procedure. And unless he has a tremendous amount of experience and training, he can't be an expert in every system of today's car. What he can do and must do is be as much help as possible to the mechanic, who is an expert in his area of responsibility because he does have the training and experience. The service salesman's major responsibility is to find out as exactly as possible the actual condition the owner is complaining about. And this is not always the condition described by the owner when he first tells you about it. And then to describe that condition accurately and clearly for the mechanic. In other words, if he can't pinpoint the problem because of its complicated nature, pinpoint the condition under which the problem occurs. This means you have to listen to the customer, Billy, not just with your ears, but with your brains also. The customer is a quick and careless diagnoser. He's not objective, not trained in diagnosis, and is always influenced by what has happened to him before. He tends to associate present service troubles with past ones. If he once had a performance problem that was cured by adjusting the carburetor, he's very likely, when he has another performance problem, to come in and say, "My carburetor needs an adjustment." It might actually be throttle linkage or any one of a half dozen other things. The skill of the service salesman is in leading the customer to reconstruct exactly when, where, and how the problem occurs, and sometimes when and where it does not occur. For example, if you had questioned Mr. Larkin enough to reconstruct his problem, you'd have discovered that his air conditioner wouldn't work until the lever was moved all the way to the right, to the defrost position. Then it turns on. This information would have told the mechanic exactly what to do. He'd have known that the problem was almost certainly one of two things. No sweat. Then, unless the service salesman can verify the true nature of the customer's complaint after talking to the customer, and sometimes by looking at the suspected source of trouble, he's got to road test the car, even though it takes time, even though customers are waiting, even though he's feeling lucky. Road test. A 5-minute road test would have told us that Mr. Rhodes' trouble was not brake pull, but front wheel misalignment. We'd have saved all that time and avoided the risk of making Mr. Rhodes dissatisfied with us. If it's a noise problem, the road test should by all means be made with the owner riding in the car, whether it's a wind whistle, a rattle, a clunk, or something else. This is the only way to be certain that you know exactly what the customer is hearing that disturbs him. A sound that annoys the owner may not bother you at all, and vice versa. If the owner hasn't time to stay for a road test, try to get him to make another appointment, for this kind of problem does not impair the safety or performance of the car. A ride with Miss Pandora Gray, for example, would have told us that the left rear quarter panel area was the source of her noise problem. That is, it would if we were paying attention, wouldn't it? Billy, I know that you've heard us say many times that owner loyalty begins and ends in the service department. That's clear and obvious, and I'm not going to talk about it. And you've heard us say that without good communication between the service salesman and the mechanic, owner loyalty ends in the service reception area. Without clear communication there and mutual helpfulness, owner loyalty and good service don't have a chance. And as a matter of fact, our own morale in this department depends on our being able to do our jobs right the first time, without comebacks or hang-ups or excuses or complaints. We need to know that we're good at what we do in order to be happy at it and satisfied with ourselves. Well, looky yonder.
Where?
Right there, coming out of the boss's office.
Thank you, Mr. Gale. You've been just perfect about everything.
Have I?
Oh, yes. Perfect and cool and understanding.
Thank you, Pandora.
I shouldn't have come, I know, but I had to. I felt so guilty about Billy.
Come back anytime. Come back tomorrow if you want to.
And you won't be mad at Billy?
I promise.
He was awfully sweet.
There's nobody here sweeter than Billy.
Bye, Mr. Gale.
Goodbye, Pandora. Enjoy your Cadillac. And you bring it right back in if your rear quarter panel ever tinkles again.